Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special Brownlow edition of the ESPN Footy Podcast today. If the Brownlow is football's night tonight, so this podcast is the podcast of podcasts. We're going to try and break down the likely winner, take a look at some cheeky betting action and see if there's any correlation between stats and Brownlow winners, if at all. Jake Michaels, you're just about jumping out of your seat in anticipation for this episode. I'm pretty sure you told me before that you didn't get much sleep thinking about it.
Not just this episode, but the Brownlow. I can't sleep. People might think I'm an absolute nerd and a weirdo for saying this, but the 3 or 4 days before the Brownlow, I can't sleep. I'm so excited for it. And so many people are just like, oh my God, it's so boring listening to Gil McLaughlin or Andrew Demetrio recalling out the votes. I love it. I just love trying to work it out. Everything involved in it, the predictors, the betting odds, everything about it. I can't wait. And this year, and look, let's be honest, previous years, the last couple we've had, we've sort of known who's going to win before the count. This year, I mean, there's 4 genuine chances to win it, and I don't think anyone would be surprised with either of those 4 winning it. So no, can't wait. Really excited.
Well, you've put your head down. You've put a body of work into analysing every game this year and the Brownlow and the potential outcomes. And we'll get to your predictor in a minute, but Christian Joly from Champion Data, it's fair to say you're probably not as, excited as Jake. Are you sleeping okay at night leading into the Brownlow?
Yeah, I'm getting plenty of sleep. No, I love the prestige of the award and, the award itself and the history of it. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm with the people that were telling Jake, listening to the counts actually be read out isn't something I look forward to. But it's still, as I said, it's an enjoyable night. And, even just the footy highlights they show throughout the night makes it bearable. But yeah, just put the votes up on the screen for me and show me footy highlights.
Jake, you got to build the suspense.
Jake, you said before that it's almost unique in a way, the Brownlow, because you know what the players have been able to do before you can actually, you put your money on after you've seen what the players have already done. So it's not like you're waiting for the game to happen. And that's
exactly right. It's very unique in that sense. It's like I always say, it's like from a betting point of view, it's like watching a game without a score in the corner and then basically trying to work out who's won the game and betting on it that way. So we've seen everything that's happened. We've seen every game. If you want, you can go back. You can look at countless predictors. You can do all the analysis that you like. And you can then try and extrapolate that and work out who will win. And just for something that keeps bugging me is people, and whenever I say I do all this stuff and I spend hours and hours putting time and effort into this, people always say, oh, who's going to win? Who's going to win? The best thing to bet on is not the winner, particularly this year. There are 4 players, as I said, that are within a vote or 2 of each other. I wouldn't be touching the winner. It's just there's no value in it right now. It's too tight to call. So there's other things that you want to be looking at on Brownlow night, but I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later.
We certainly will. You did mention the hours and hours of work you put in. We call it the ESPN Brownlow Predictor, but really it's your Brownlow Predictor that's on the website. You can find this if you just Google ESPN Brownlow Predictor, or if you go to espn.com.au/AFL, it's just there on the homepage. Tell us a little bit about how it works, because yours is not the traditional Brownlow Predictor in the sense that you don't give out 3, 2, 1 for every game.
No, so probably about 5 years ago, as I said, all my life I've been very much a big fan of the Brownlow. I remember my parents telling me that I'd sit there and watch the 1997 Brownlow Medal just like glued to the screen. I loved it, always have. But about 5 or 6 years ago, I was just following all the normal predictors, the AFL predictor and a couple of other ones, and they all vote 3, 2, 1. And I found that the margin there's not much. There's quite a large margin for error when you're voting 3, 2, 1. And I just thought there has to be a better way of doing it. So, for example, the best way I like to explain the way I do it is, and this is a quite simplistic way of looking at it, but for example, if you have a game and there are 2 players who are the clear standouts, rather than trying to pick who's the best player and giving one of them 3 and the other 2, I give both of them 2.5. And what that does is it reduces your margin for error. So what happens is the worst case scenario with the AFL or other predictors that are voting 3, 2, 1, worst case scenario is if they get it that order wrong, they're a full vote off. Worst case scenario with mine is you're half a vote off. And over the course of the season, that reduces your margin for error. And so the variance reduces and you're more likely to have a more accurate result at the end of the season.
So you're still giving out, if you're giving out three...
I still give out 6 votes for each game.
Right.
And it can be any combination of, some votes I do give 3, 2, 1. If I feel like there is a clear best on ground, a clear second, and a clear third. But it's quite rare. I'd say probably 1 in 10 games I might vote exactly like that, 3, 2, 1. But usually there might be 2 players that receive 2.5. But any combination of any combination that adds up that total 6, because we've still got to give 6 votes. You can't be going and giving 9 votes in a game. The umpires will only give 6. Obviously they do it 3, 2, 1. But the way I do it, as I said, it reduces that variance over the course of the season. So you're more likely to get an accurate result.
Right. And so some players then would have ended the season with, say, 19.5 votes. So it might look a bit odd, but it works.
Will. And some people that we've received a few little interesting comments from people who have clearly not gone in and had a look at it. But some of the graphics we've put up on the socials, I think we had Tuke Miller on 27.5. And a few people sort of saying, I'm interested to see the game where he polls half a vote. Well, no, he's not going to finish on a 0.5, but as I said, it will reduce that variance over time. So, yes, that explains that.
Read beyond the headline. Christian, I guess just purely looking at what Jake does, from a statistical analysis point of view, does it make sense to be doing that sort of stuff and divvying up the votes more than just your regular 3, 2, 1? Does it make sense?
No, he's nailed it. The explanation was perfect as well, and it's exactly what we do. We have our own sort of Brownlow predictor using machine learning, which again I can describe in more detail soon. But we're exactly the same. Split up the 6 total votes amongst a variance of players depending on the percentage of likeliness that they're going to get the 3 votes. And for any game you look at, I don't think we've got 100% that someone's going to get 3 votes in a game. I think we were just discussing before. Josh Bruce, 10 goals was 2.7 and a few more 2.7s across the board. But hard to sort of just guarantee that someone's going to get 3 votes in any game across the season.
Jake, you said it was quite tight, or it would likely be quite tight at the top. I guess probably now is the best time to run us through who you think your top 5 would be and how many votes they're going to be getting.
Yeah, it's extremely tight. I can't really remember 2 players being this tight at the top, let alone, as I said, 4 with a couple more just below. So as things stand right now, my winner is Ollie Wines with 32 votes. Clayton Oliver and Jack Steele will tie for second on 31. And fourth will be Marcus Bontempelli on 30. And then I've got Miller back on 27.5, as I said before. So that's my top 5 right now. So 5 players polling quite high. Obviously, 4 of them polling 30, which hasn't happened before.
I was going to say that would be quite unusual, wouldn't it?
It would be quite unusual, but there's no reason why they can't. The votes are there. As I said, I actually take a more cautious approach than anything when it comes to allocating the votes. But I think I can certainly see all 4 of those guys polling certainly in excess of 27, 28 votes. What's
your track record with picking winners, by the way? I didn't ask you this before, but I probably should have.
Well, winners, purely just the winners, I've picked 6 of the last 7. Having said that, it's not overly impressive because most of the winners, as I said, have been quite... most people that would put any kind of time into this would be getting most of those right. But I think for the most part, this is going to be a tricky one. If I can get this year's one, I'll be quite happy.
If you do want to follow along while you're listening, you can get up the ESPN Brownlow predictor and just see how we're looking at this and who the top 5 and top 10 and beyond is, Jake. But potentially, if you had to look at some of the more bigger surprises for the evening that you can predict, it could be someone who's going to top a team's voting count, who might be a bit of a surprise number, or someone falling short of expectations. Have you got anything on there that sort of jumps out as a bit strange?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So firstly, I'll give you a couple of players that might poll better than expected. So Luke Parker is someone I've always been a big fan of as a player, and he's always polled really well, Luke Parker of Sydney. Again, Sydney won a lot of games. They played well. He's generally the player that you notice. He probably didn't have a great first half of the season, but he came storming home. I've got him finishing on 22 and really, really close to that top 10. right on the cusp of the top 10. 22 votes. A lot of other predictors have him sort of around that 17 to 18 mark. So I think he might poll a little bit better than expected, and think he's good value to top Sydney's count ahead of Callum Mills. On the other side of the coin, the one I think might poll a little bit less than expected is Rory Laird. Another good player, another player that wins a lot of the ball. But I guess the couple of things with Laird is Crows obviously didn't win a huge amount of games. Again, some predictors have him polling 22, 23. I've got him down around 16. So it's not a huge gap, but it's a big enough. If you're going from 23 to 16, that's probably going from 9th to 18th or something like that. So it's a fair drop, but I think it'll be quite tight in that middle band from 10th to 20th. And I think early in the season, when Adelaide won a few games and were playing well, it was Taylor Walker who's probably getting the 3 votes in the first 3 games. He did play well throughout the season, but probably picked up a lot of his touches in losses, so more likely to pick up 1s than 2s and 3s. So that's probably where I'm looking with Laird. I think Ben Cunnington might surprise with a few votes. Got him winning North Melbourne's reasonably comfortably ahead of Jai Simpkin. A lot of people have that quite close. But the one I wouldn't be touching in terms of a team winner is Brisbane. Jared Lyons, I got 19, and Hugh McCluggage 18.5, around that mark. I just don't think there's value in taking either of them. Lyons is if you're going to take one, I'd take McCluggage for the value at 3-1, but I certainly wouldn't be taking Lyons. I think it's way too close. The only thing that probably works in Lyons' favour is, as we were discussing before we started, is McCluggage, as great as he was in the first half of the year, he's not yet a proven vote getter. So we don't know how he's going to go with the umpires yet. And that is important. And it's the same with someone like Darcy Parish too. As good as he was, he's not someone who's polled votes in the past. And it usually takes you a bit of time to get noticed, because it's not a computer that, we can use all the analysis and data that we want. But at the end of the day, it's human beings that are making this call, and they can make mistakes if they're not looking for players.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think that's fascinating to sort of consider when you think about stuff like that, and that someone can probably have a better year, but if they're first or a second year player, or they just haven't had time in the midfield, a la Darcy Parish, they might just not be as front of mind to the umpires as other players.
Yeah, I think what will help Parish, as opposed to someone like McCluggage, is the fact that Parish's standout games were really real standout games, and not only that, three of his games he won the medal for best on ground. So I mean, that's a presentation that's done, that's clearly seen by the umpires. I think you can almost pencil in those 9 votes there.
You think they're influenced by who they see?
I think they do, and I think probably by the halfway point of the season, when Parish went on that run from I think week 9 to 12, where he potentially gets 4 best on grounds in a row. That was kind of the point where everyone was sort of talking about him. And I think from that point on, he's probably more likely to pick up votes. I'd be surprised. But yeah, Anzac Day early on, round 6, he'll probably get he's almost certain to get the 3 there. And round 3, he was very good too. So I think
forget the revered country game, Jake.
Yes. What's the medal called in that? Do you know? I have no idea. But yes, so I think Parish will poll quite well. And again, Essendon's one's tough too. Parish versus Merritt, very tight. I got Parish marginally ahead, but I certainly wouldn't be backing either of them. I think it's pretty close to call, and Merritt's another player who polls quite well.
If you do have a spare half an hour, or even longer ahead of Brownlow night, highly recommend you check out ESPN or Jake's email, ESPN predictor. I'd love to say that we had something to do with it, but it's all him, and he's done a fantastic job and put tons and tons of man hours into it. So have a look, see what you can find there, and let us know how you go at Footy Tips on Twitter. Christian, Champion Data also has a Brownlow predictor. You said before, or you hinted before, that it's a machine learning sort of system. So please, I guess, explain how the votes come about, how the votes are given, and what this, I guess, machine learning does.
Yeah, so we've probably been similar to Jake. Probably had a Brownlow predictor, I think for almost 10, 11 years now. I think our first one, we predicted Jimmy Bartel to win or something, and he might have won that year, and it goes all the way back to there. But it's been refined probably 5 or 10 times since then. And where I've ended up, and I think we've used the same one for the last 2 or 3 years. It's basically, it's machine learning based on previous polling history, how the votes are being given previously in the past, and what stats correlate with being given those votes. Really looking at the zone of those stats. So we know obviously it's the midfield zone where a lot of the weighting's given to stats one. Previous polling history of the player as well. So we sort of know that there is certain umpire bias, if you like, to certain players. And we'll talk more depth about more players soon. But Darcy Parish is the great example, as Jake spoke about. We've got him on 10 votes predicted, which is currently 28th in the Brownlow Medal. But it's because previously coming into the season, he'd polled 2 career Brownlow votes. So he never, had as much midfield time and hadn't had as bigger games. But even our predictor is probably, going to be a year behind predicting Parish if the umpires do start to notice him and fall in love with him this year. And as Jake said, give him the 3 best on grounds in a row when he's winning the medals. We're predicting him to get certain votes in those games, but probably not as high because Merritt is the other one in his team that does have that umpire bias sort of weighted towards him. So we've probably got Merritt. I think Merritt on 19.8 votes. And again, similar to Jake, we don't have full votes given out. We've got decimal points because of the way the voting's given out. Darcy Parish on 10. So you can sort of see that, even using this machine learning, sometimes the umpire bias is hard to predict coming into the season.
Well, as you said, like Jake, these are done by human beings. So you can kind of have these machines that take into account stats and where the ball is won and all that sort of stuff. But you're right. You can't, it's almost like you need to find a little algorithm that can be in place for a player who does start to get noticed midway through the year. And does sort of start to prick the ears of the umpires as they're walking through and they go, oh, yeah.
Well, I've had many theories over the years. I mean, one of them that I've always spoken about is the player that gets interviewed after the game. I feel, I was just mentioning to you guys, this is just on the down low, but I've actually recorded every single player that's been interviewed immediately after on the broadcast. I've got a list of every player that was interviewed after every game, and I'm going to see how that correlates to the votes in this year. It's the first time I've done it. So stay tuned for the answers there, because if that has some sort of bearing, then that'll be factored into next year's predictions as well. But yeah, there are theories like that, but there's some things you just can't know. And I mean, like, look at that Bulldogs game against North Melbourne where Josh Bruce kicked 10. I mean, every man and his dog will give him 3 votes in the predictor. But what if the umpires don't give him the 3? Like, there's no guarantee that he gets the 3. I mean, I've got him with the 3. I'd be stunned if he didn't get it. But at the end of the day, they are human beings, and I guess for something like that where you kick 10 goals, you're more likely to get the 3 when you kick 10 goals than if you have 40 touches. And there was a game, I reckon Parish's that first game where he had about 38 touches, but the one before Anzac Day, I didn't notice he played because I personally wasn't used to watching Parish rack up the ball. So that's the sort of thing we're talking about. Players that, whether it's Parish, whether it's McCluggage, there's certain players that haven't polled that well in the past. And then on the other hand, there are players that do poll quite well, like Merritt, like Parker, those type of players. So yeah, there's so many ways you can look at it. There's so many factors that you can factor in, but where does it end?
Christian, what does Champion Data's top 5 look like, and how many votes do they have?
Yeah, so we got Ollie Wines, 30.5 votes predicted. So number 1, same as Jake's got him. But yeah, sort of pretty much a fair way from second compared to Jake's count. Jack Steele, 24.6, and Jack McRae, 24.5. So obviously split it by 0.1 of a prediction there.
That's an interesting one, McRae. So McRae, I've got him down in 13th on mine. So I've only got him polling 19 votes, McRae. 19.5 votes, McRae.
And here's another one that I think last year a lot of predictors had him and Bontempelli quite close together, and I think he outpolled Bontempelli by 5 votes or so last year. And I think he might have outpolled him the year before. So again, in terms of looking at past history and the bias of those two, he's come up slight ahead. So 4th is Clayton Oliver, 23.7. Then we've got Bont at 5th at 23.4. So 1.1 predicted votes away from Jack McRae. And you could almost give that 1.1 weighting just based on the bias of previous polling history. So there's no reason for that not to be able to flip quite easily in Bont to finish on top of McRae by the end of the night.
So the thing that jumps out to me about that is that Wines is almost 6 votes ahead of the next best player, and both of you have him over 30 votes. Is that something you could, like, if there's value anywhere, could it be potentially looking at something like Wines to get more than 30 votes?
I think so, and it stands out for us on our one as well, because Travis Boak is probably similar to what we're saying with McRae versus Bonds, Zach Merritt versus Parish. Travis Boak's, Ollie Wines always had a great umpire bias, and Travis Boak's also had one as well. Travis Boak's had a great year. We've got him only getting 18.4 projected votes. And the other thing with Ollie Wines, he's always polled well, and I saw Jake's, seen how he's polled previously. He's had a career best season. He's got 8 more touches per game, 8 more times to be noticed. I think 3 more contested possessions than he's ever averaged. So he's probably been, his output's probably 10, 15% higher than any other season he's had. And he's been a previous poll, a good poll in the Brownlow. So again, we've got him on 30.5 with, Travis Boak, as I said, taking a few votes off him. But if the bias sort of swings towards Wines, by the mid-season, he'd be easily into 32, 33 votes, you'd think.
This has always been the biggest frustration I have with people talking about the Brownlow is, such and such steals votes off such and such. Well, let's face it. The other 45 players out there now are stealing votes off you. Every other player can take the votes off you in any game. So, the thing, whether people say, Petrarca's taking votes off Oliver or Boak's taking votes off Wines. Okay, well, they might be splitting more of the votes, but they're also winning more games than a Sam Walsh at Carlton or a Jack Steele at St Kilda. So I think I don't read too much into that. I never really have. I've always thought that kind of idea was a little bit overrated. Just going back to Ollie Wines, though, and I think I've never had a player in all the years I've been doing this potentially polling in as many games as Ollie Wines. I've had so the year Dustin Martin won, I had him polling more votes when he polled 36. But I didn't have Martin polling in as many games. I've only got 2 games, round 3 and round 8, where I say that Wines won't poll anything. Round 12, they had the bye port. Every other game, I've got him potentially polling votes. And from round 13 to round 23, I've got him polling up to 18 votes in that after the bye, which, I mean, is incredible. And I'm not saying he will poll in 20 games, but we know that as the season went on, more and more focus came on Wines. And as you only have to look at previous years, and when the attention's on a player, those 1s quickly turn into 2s, and the 2s turn into 3s. So I think Wines can poll 30, which is quite interesting to look at the AFL's predictor, because they've only got him on 19 votes. Couldn't believe that.
Whack. Just had to get that one in there, didn't you?
And just on Wines, we're the same as you. Yeah, no chance for votes in round 3. But even in round 8, we've got a 0.3, votes for him. So, and again, that goes back to, he's probably polled a 1 vote playing just as well previously in the past. There's a chance he sneaks a vote in that night, Jake, and adds to your tally.
Will anyone ever poll a vote in every game for a season?
Jeez, that'd be what an effort that would be. You'd have to be the top 3 players on the ground in every single game.
Unreal.
Biggest surprises, Christian? Anything jump out at you from Champion Data's list that might interest our listeners?
No, I mean, again, we always talk about the top and the leaders, but the one that interests me, and again, just that sums up how this, machine learning works and how much it is to do with predicting the votes of the Brownlow, not predicting the best player on the ground. So we've got Nick Naitanui as our, using player ratings as our number 1 rated player this year. And ahead of, I think Petrarca and Gordon were up there as well. But we're predicting him to get 2.7 votes. Just basically, I don't think he's ever had more than 10 votes in a season. I think he's only had about 5 or 6 in the past 3 years and things like that. So you can sort of see how different it is trying to figure out who's the best statistically the player is. We've got Naitanui highly, but trying to predict the Brownlow Medal and where the votes are going to be given, we sort of know that he just doesn't attract the votes. So
it's interesting because he won the best and fairest and may only end up with 7 votes.
Yeah, we've got him on 2.7 with.
Well, I've got him with a few. I got him on 6, but again, I've got Gaff, Kelly, Sheed, and potentially Darling all finished above him.
He was also the ruck in the Champion Data's All Stats All Australian as well, wasn't he?
Yeah,
off the top of my head, yeah. It's interesting how that works. So you can get these accolades, but on Brownlow night, it's still very much a midfielder's award.
Well, I always said you could play 200 games and be the fourth best player on the ground every game, and you'll never poll a Brownlow vote, but you'll have been you'll be a Hall of Fame player.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a quirk of the system, that the whole Brownlow. There are two things: should the Brownlow votes be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and should the umpires be voting on the Brownlow medal?
Oh, look, questions for another day, I think, for sure. Christian, any other surprises before we move on to some of the best bets on the night?
No, again, so just looking at, obviously looking ahead to the game next week. But as I said, went through the top 5. So got Wines and Steele top 2, Port Adelaide, St Kilda. But just, Macrae, Oliver, Bontempelli and Petrarca from 3 to 6th. And you can throw in Max Gawn, who even we're speaking about Nat Nui in Ruckman. We've still got him predicted to get 20.9 votes this year. So that's even based on the umpire bias we talked about in previous polling history. He's played really, really well and has come up really highly in the predictor. So, he's still only 3rd at Melbourne. So I don't think he's a chance to, sneak in their most votes at the club or anything. But
you've got Gawn on 20.9, did you say?
Yeah, sitting at 9th.
I had him on 17, and I thought I feel that might be a touch high.
Well, geez, you're both above 15, so maybe Gawn 15 plus is something there, or who knows? What's interesting, because this is now
never trust a ruckman.
This is man versus machine here. This is Jake versus the might of champion data. We can do maybe a review in the next pod if we get a bit of a time, just to go back and one of you can gloat and say that you've got the better predictor. Some of the best bets for the night, if you had to pick your 5 best bets, gentlemen. Jake, I might ask you first, if you can sort of whip through these.
There's so many. I've spent hours and hours and hours on all these predictors and everything, looking at all the stuff. As I said off the top, I think people generally get sucked into betting on the winner, and sometimes that's fine. But this year, I think it's just too hard to pick. And I think clearly, I know Christian's got Wines a fair way ahead, and I've got him top 2, but top as well. But I just don't have him winning it, in my opinion, by that much where I'm comfortable putting money on him to win it. So I'm looking at other things. Someone asked me earlier in the week, what's the best way to double their money? So what's the best way to get 2 to 1 odds for the Brownlow medal? So
gamble
responsibly. But here's the best way I think you can double your money. Wines to finish top 5, Oliver to finish top 5, Petrarca to finish top 10, Steele to finish top 10, and Merritt to finish top 20. I think that'll double your money. That'll be slightly more than 2 to 1 odds. I think that is a very, very, very easy way to double your money. Gamble responsibly.
Anything a bit quirky? Team toppers? Anything?
Yeah. So teams is always the other one that people like to bet on. And there are 9 that I'll go with. I think I'm not going with all of them, but if I wanted to feel comfortable, the 9 I'd be going with would be De Goey, Mundy, Josh Kelly, Guthrie, Oliver, Boak, and that's without Ollie Wines market, Dustin Martin, Luke Parker, and the Bont. So I'd be going those 9, and that'll pay 7 to 1 around that mark for those 9 players to top their counts. Again, the Boak one is without Ollie Wines in that. And just a couple of other ones. So I think it's quite clear. I think the Bont might not poll as well as people predict. A lot of people expect him to just finish top 2. I've actually got him outside the 3 in mine, and in a couple of other kind of predictors that I do that I don't publish online, I've got him also finishing 4th or 5th. So the box trifecta that I really like is Oliver, Steele, Wines in any order. Those 3 to be the top 3 in any order, and that's paying 11 to 1. I think that's fantastic odds for those 3. To be top 3 in any order at 11 to 1. Another one I really like, and I'll get to my favorite bet of the Brownlow, but just before that, one other one. There's a little special going on at the moment and this will pay $2.70. But Walsh, Parish, Miller, Steele, Oliver, Bontempelli, and Petrarca, all to have 4 or more 3-vote best on ground games. So I think that's all highly likely. So I've got Walsh with 6, Parish 7, Miller 6, Steele 7, Oliver 7, Bont 9, and Petrarca 6. And I think that's paying $2.70. I think that's very likely. And as we've touched on before, the umpires, if it's always an unsure, the bigger name gets the 3 votes. So you can be pretty confident with that one, I think. And my favorite bet of the Brownlow, which is actually shortened in of the last 48 hours, it was 7-1 and it's now 5-1. I still think it's good value at 5-1. Is another combo one. So it's Merritt and Parish to combine for 42. I've got them on 46. Petrarca and Oliver to combine for 55. I've got them around 60. Bontempelli and McRae to combine for 45. I've got them on 50, and Wines and Boat to combine for 50. I've got them on about 54, and that's paying, as I said, 5-1. I think all four of those combos do come up.
You said that was a special. Not that we want to give any plugs unnecessarily, but is that somewhere?
That is a special. A couple of them are specials on a betting site that is blue and has a bogan guy doing the ads for them. So get on that one. But no, there's tons and tons of stuff out there. I mean, there's heaps of stuff you can go. The Ollie Wines to poll in the most games. We just said Christian and I both have him polling in a lot of games. You can get 275 on Wines to poll in the most games. He's the second favorite. Oliver's actually a favorite to poll in the most games, but I like Wines in that market. If there's one thing I think is an absolute certainty, it's Christian Petrarca to finish top 10. It's $1.40. I'm stunned that's. I can't believe that's not about $1.05. $1.40 for Petrarca to finish top 10. I think every predictor I've seen has got him finishing about 5th or 6th. So, there's lots to bet on. Gamble responsibly. But yeah, it should be a cracker.
Very good. Christian, I don't know if you're able to, in your position, offer any insights about what you would be looking at. But if there was, do you have any, or is that non-champion data?
We can't bet on football anyway, so I haven't looked at all the markets. But yeah, just an interesting one. David Mundy, don't know how short he is. We've got Andrew Brayshaw, a couple of votes ahead of him, so he might be one chance to look at. And also we do have Jared Lyons on 18 and Zorko only on 13. But again, there's not, they're 15th and 18th place. So maybe even Dane Zorko, a cheeky one, with a lot of, I think the markets would be leaning towards Lyons and McCluggage to lead the Brisbane count. Zorko's had an okay season and has been previously a good poller. So, Brayshaw and Zorko might be a couple of names that might sort of stand out for their clubs. And again, Cam Guthrie, 19.1, 13th. Could you bet on him for the top 15 or top 10? He might be a chance. Again, just sort of well ahead of any other Geelong player, really, for the vote. So, when Geelong play well, he'll usually get the 1 or 2, you'd think, at least.
Very good, team. If you're looking for any other special little tips or anything like that, just go to Twitter and hit up J Michaels ESPN, because I'm sure he'll be more than happy.
You can abuse me there. Hey, who wins, Matt? Who you got?
I got to say, the Brownlow is just not my sort of event, but I will happily follow both of your leads and say that Ollie Wines will win.
I think it'll be Wines or Oliver. I think Bont and Steele probably are either a lot of threes or nothings. I think Wines and Oliver, there's too many games that they could both poll in. I think it'll be one of those. I'll stick with Wines, as the predictor says, but I wouldn't be surprised if Oliver was to win it by a couple of votes.
Very good. Christian, thanks for joining us, offering Champion Data's insight as always. Jake, thanks for all the man hours you put into ESPN's Brownlow Predictor. It's done some good page views for us this year, so it's paying the bills, which is nice. And to everyone at home, thanks for listening. Hope you found an interesting nugget. Enjoy the Brownlow, gamble with some responsibilities, and we'll speak to you on Tuesday when we've got Josh Dunkley on the pod, Jake.
Yeah, we do. He's back, preparing for a grand final over in Perth, so it'll be good to have a chat with him again. And I'm sure we'll revisit the Brownlow briefly, especially if our predictions are way off, if Petrarca wins or something.
Christian, maybe you can come up with some pieces of advice for dunks for teams that win grand finals, what they're most likely to do and beat their opposition in, and he can take that back to Bevo and the group and give him a bit of a leg up.
I think I'd trust Bevo to probably be able to deliver a bit more better message than me. But no, look forward to having dunks for 4 days out from a granny. Be good.
Yeah, good stuff. It'll be an interesting chat, of course. And to everyone at home, we'll speak to you in the next one.